So Jennifer is going to finish out our individual presentations, and she's going to talk about regrets and relief after loss. So take it away, Jennifer.
All right. Because my slides are next to me, you may want to pin my screen so you can read them, but I'll be reading them right along with you. So if you don't want to do that, that's fine too. Okay, let me just, sure. All right. So a little bit about me. I'm a caregiving consultant, educator, and a certified life coach. And I help caregivers of aging parents stop hating their lives and hating their carees while I care for them. My company's name is Brave Caregiving. So a little bit about my caregiving journey with my mom, just to give you some context. My mom had advanced arthritis and fibromyalgia and was very limited in her mobility for many, many years. She drove a scooter and had a lift chair and a ramp van and managed for many years that way. But my dad died in 2015 and she was living alone and very lonely, missed my dad. And we were only 4 miles away from her. So we would go there every day, all the time, over and over. And it seems silly because we were so close, but we just thought if we were all in one place, this would make a whole lot more sense. So at the beginning of 2019, we decided we were going to add a fully accessible suite onto our home. And it was a massive renovation. And so we started plans. And then the day our plans were approved, I unexpectedly brought home a 2-week-old baby that we were completely unexpected. My great nephew is with us now, and he was removed from his parents, and we were plan C, but we were suddenly plan A overnight, and we literally had a week's notice. Brought him home, thought we would be doing this for maybe 6 months until dad kind of got his act together. And 2.5 years later, we are adopting him this year. So the data plans were approved. February 4th, 2019 was the day we brought him home. And we began renovation with a newborn. And that was an adventure. We kept living here, but you know, whenever you do renovations, it's just kind of a mess, and ended up living out of hotels, and then ultimately ended up living with my mom. And then the renovation was over in November. It took like twice as long as we thought, which of course it did. And we moved in a week before Thanksgiving and then hosted Thanksgiving because we were crazy, and moved her in. And initially it was a huge adjustment for her and for us, but more for her because she had lived in this house with my dad for 35 years. And this was just, she went back and forth about whether she was going to do it. So we finally did it. And what I learned from that is that moving in with my mom, or having her move in, amplified every issue we ever had. I thought it would make it all easier, and it made it a whole lot harder. I had nowhere to escape to. Before I could leave and come back, but I did have places I could go, but it wasn't the same. And so in the middle of all of this stressful caregiving happening, we are also raising this infant, and it was such an interesting contrast because my mom was declining and my son was thriving, and their needs were exactly the same. And it was a true full circle of life moment. So in February of 2020, right before COVID, my mom was hospitalized for what turned out to be sepsis from a UTI and pneumonia. And she had no symptoms except for this night of confusion where she was driving her scooter around aimlessly. And we called 911 and they took her, and we found out, she could have died had we not called that night. And she came home on palliative care She needed oxygen. And we ended up just going with hospice. The confusion started soon after. She was really confused. I fought this, as I talked about before. I thought if she just got a good night's sleep, she'd be fine. If she just took her pills the way she was supposed to, she'd be fine. And it was even harder because one day she was completely lucid, and the next day she didn't remember anything we talked about. And so I almost blamed her for it, like it was her fault. Like she just needed to get it together. I didn't tell her that, but in my head, it just built to the frustration and the resentment and all of that really built up. I was in some pretty strong denial about her dementia, to the point where she would have these, I don't know that they were hallucinations, but I think a lot of times she would fall asleep watching the TV, wake up and think that things were happening that weren't. And this was in the middle of COVID, the middle of lots of drama on the news. And she would wake up and think like that some crazy thing was happening. And so in our attempt to calm her, she just took that as, you don't believe me and you're trying to make me wrong. And our intent was never to do that, but we really should have just stepped into her reality at that moment. We didn't know to do that. We really thought we were doing something good. So we argued, and for probably 6 months straight. I mean, it was constant. I think I cried the entire year. I know now that that was grief. I was grieving her before she was gone. But it was the roller coaster that I would never want to be on again. And, you know, ultimately now looking back, I realized we just wanted the same things. We both wanted to be heard. We both wanted to be acknowledged, and we really kind of both wanted to be right. And it was sometimes when we would have these really deep conversations, it was like looking in a mirror. And so I had these moments of, okay, she lives a really small life. She has very little control over things right now. I need to be the compassionate person here. And I could do that for a time, and then I would be triggered all over again. And so it was really, really difficult. Ultimately, I mean, it kind of led to a point when about 2 weeks before she died, I was so upset. And I remember going into the bathroom, and I could so relate, Bobby, to your dark place that you were in. I just went in the bathroom and I cried, and I talked to my dad and said, come get her. Like, she needs to go. And partly because she really did, like, she was in so much pain, but I couldn't do it. And then a week later, she stopped eating. And a week after that, she was gone. So that took some time to work through, because I really thought I had something to do with that. Okay, so ultimately she died in December. My mom died December 22nd, and my dad died December 30th. So they couched Christmas for me, which is changing rituals. So after my mom's death, I really, grief did not look the way I thought it would. I did not cry for days. I felt immediate relief and huge regrets. But the relief was almost overwhelming. And what I realized in my coaching world, we have what we call a relationship manual. And the fun part about these things is that it's basically a set of rules, and we all have them. We have a set of rules for people in our life, and we want them to follow those rules. And if they follow those rules, we will feel better, right? But we don't tell them the rules. We just like expect these things to happen. So part of a manual, which I had definitely had for my mom and I had for myself, and I will talk about that specifically. The rules seem really reasonable. So for instance, you know, my partner should pick up their dirty clothes and put them in the laundry. My friends should wish me happy birthday. They should call me back when I call them. my mom should appreciate all that I do for her. She should tell me thank you, of course, So they're reasonable, really. And the problem is we can't control people. I don't know about you, but I haven't figured out how. If I do, I'll let you know, but we can't control people. And for purposes of this presentation, I'm really talking about other adults in our life. Children and employees are kind of a different category. What this does, though, is it ultimately puts us at the effect of others' behavior. And so we can't control people. And then we start trying to, and we start controlling, manipulating, withholding things, punishing if they don't do what we want them to do. And this is, I mean, we all do this. You're not a bad person if you do this. We all do this. But what happens is we don't end up taking responsibility for our own feelings, and we're giving away all our power. We've become the victim of the person that's not following the manual. So I was like the victim of my mother, right? And I was very much in that place. So here's the manual I had for my mom. She should be nice. She should be happy, especially when I was there. She should respect that I have a job and a life, not want me to spend all my time with her. She should be lucid when we have important conversations, right? And she should remember them. She should sleep through the night. She had a bell that she would ring, and she would ring it in the middle of the night for non-emergencies, and she should only ring that bell for emergencies. She should remember what she said to me the next day, and she should be grateful for my sacrifices and thank me regularly. And then we would have these conversations where I was like, I just want to take a month off of work, but I worked for myself, so there was no vacation time, and she would offer to pay me to do that. But then she'd forget that she offered. And so I would make all these arrangements, and then, so it was a negotiation. So ultimately, all of these things come down to, she should be different. I just wanted her to be different. And why did I want her to be different? Because I wanted to feel better. I thought that if she followed this manual, I would feel better. I also had a manual for myself and my grief. And my manual was I should be crying all the time. And I still have a little bit of this. I should be sad all the time. I should want to have a funeral. I should not feel relief. I should not feel regret or guilt. And, we got really close to our hospice workers. And I was initially more upset that they weren't coming back, because I really felt supported by them. And it was like our whole support team was gone. I should be happy to settle her estate and not dread it. And I shouldn't want to go back to work. I should need time and, mourn her. Ultimately, all of these things, I should be different. If I was different, if I did all of this stuff, then I would feel better. And I would feel like the good daughter, the daughter that grieves her mom the way we're supposed to grieve. So I want to take a moment to do an exercise with you. And I want you to think of someone that you might have a manual for. It could be yourself. It can be an entity. It could be like the hospital that gave you the wrong diagnosis, the doctor. It could be a sibling that does not participate in the caregiving. It could be the person that has died. And because we have such a small group, we could just share and then think about some rules that you have for them. What are your rules? What are the things that you think, if only they did it my way, life would be better. I would feel good. So let me check the chat while you guys are doing that. Let's see. Angel, I should be past this and get it together. I should feel better by now. I should know who I am. I should be honoring them instead of being bitter and disappointed. Yeah. My mom, sister, and brother should have given me a manual for their wishes. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. And this feels so real. I mean, these really are like rules that we feel people should follow. And there's nothing wrong with wanting this. So does anyone want to share some rules that yeah, Ashley.
So my husband has alcohol use disorder. He's been in active recovery for over a year now. But when he was actively drinking, I had all kinds of rules for him. Like, he should just be happy the way his life is and not to drink. He just needs to stop drinking and everything would be better, which that's not true, by the way. Just because they stop doesn't mean everything else gets fixed. And I had all of these like expectations for him. And I've also learned in the process that expectations are frequently what is it? They're like premeditated resentments. When you have expectations of people.
Yes.
Because it is like
call them dream killers.
Yeah, we have a whole story that we make up in our head about how things are supposed to go, and when it doesn't go that way, which it rarely does because we have no control over anything but our own selves, then it just feels like our whole world is falling apart. And like, why can't people just do what they're supposed to do when we've never even gone over this like manual we have in our heads with them ever, not even one time.
No, we don't tell them.
We just
Ever.
expect them to just get it, and that's never going to be the case. Nobody can read each other's minds. Like, if we want to communicate what we need from somebody, we have to do that. So
and guess what? He has a manual for you.
oh yeah,
everybody's got manuals for us too.
that's true.
Not fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mom should have taught me how to deal with my emotions. Oh, Angel. Regina, for my husband while he was convalescing, would it be so terrible to express appreciation? Oh my gosh, I can so relate to that. Like, I have given up my life for you, mother. Why are you not saying thank you? Like, I mean, it was so real. My brother should have gone to dialysis and not been so secretive about his hospitalizations. Oh, I felt treated like the hotel maid. You know, my mom called my partner her driver. She was her full-time caregiver, but she would introduce her as her driver. That was painful. My sister should have told me how sick she was. Yeah. So these are so painful. They cause so much pain. And the next question is, what would you feel or believe if they just followed your manual? For me, it was patience. I would have been peaceful, calm. I would not have been so upset because, you know, it was all her fault. Like, really, I believed that. And so then you ask yourself, how does it feel when you realize that you're handing that person the entire control of your emotions? Here, mom, in your sick, dementia, you know, immobile state, take control of how I feel. Like, how fair is that, right? I mean, but it's so normal. We all do this. So Angel, I'd feel more stable. Yes. Anybody have a feeling or belief that if they just followed your manual, what you would feel? Angel, I would feel more at peace.
I think I want to say that I would feel more or less abandoned, but I know that that's not true. So I would like to feel less abandoned, but I know that even if they follow my manual, because they're not here physically, I still feel abandoned. So it's just very weird.
Yeah. It's like intellectually we know that this is not true, but we haven't been able to sort of process it, appreciate it enough. Enough is such a big one. I would feel in a partnership. Yeah, cognitive dissonance is big. We have two thoughts that are completely opposite and we believe them both and we're just stuck. So if we can't control other people, what do? Well, we drop the manual. We need to stop outsourcing our emotional control. It's an inside job. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't make requests of people. But if we can do so from a place of love and calm and peace, not anger or resentment. So for example, with my situation, if I would have gone to my mom and said, how about when we discuss financial things, we write it down, and you write down that you are agreeing to do this. I don't want to ever take advantage of you, but sometimes you don't remember things. And I don't ever want it to be said that I was trying to like take your money. So can we make this agreement that you will write this down so that if you do forget, it won't be an issue? Rather than, Mom, you said you would pay for my vacation. What do you, I could go right back there. So we still can make these requests, but they can still say no. And that's okay. It's not other people's job to make us feel better. They're not qualified. They can't get into our head. Now, certainly things that other people do will affect us, but we choose how we think about it. Let's see what we've got here. I never handed over control. I would feel in a partnership, but I never handed over control. Angel, even saying it out loud is weird. Yeah. So we have something in my coaching world that we call emotional adulthood, and that is when we take control of our own emotions. We take responsibility for our own emotions. And when we are not doing that, we call that emotional childhood. And we all are in emotional childhood all the time. Blaming other people for doing, for not making me happy. But when we can step back and really, and we often can't when we're in grief, we just can't. But when we can get to that place where like, I can take responsibility for the fact that I was not compassionate with my mom, and that's okay. And I did the best I could with what I had. And if I could go back and do it again, of course I would do it better, but I don't really know that I would, because I was in a certain place. So when we become emotional adults and when we take that power back, it gives us all of our control back. We're not victims anymore. It's very powerful. It is not easy to do. Here's a way we can do it. We can create intentional manuals for ourselves. So here's my intentional manual that I am still working on. It's okay that I feel relief when I think about my mom dying. I will have compassion for myself and let go of my regrets. When I think I'm doing everything wrong, I'm going to remind myself I'm doing the best I can. I'm going to allow all the feelings whenever they come, but I'm not going to rush it. If I'm not feeling sad, I'm not going to stress about that. The sadness will come when it comes. I'm also going to allow myself to feel some anger if I have anger. And I'm going to forgive myself for being human and having a human brain. I'm going to take responsibility for my feelings. No more outsourcing. That's a hard one to do all the time. And I know that I'm responsible for my own happiness. I also would add to this that I would fully allow myself to feel joy as well as pain, because really it's 50-50. We feel both of them. I'm responsible for my own joy. Yes. We don't think about this enough. We really are. Our thoughts are so powerful. Happiness is overrated. You know what? You're absolutely right, Angel, because if we don't know sadness, we don't know happiness. Can you imagine like being happy all the time? Everything would be the same. We wouldn't know happy or sad.
I don't know if you guys listen or read Brene Brown.
Yeah.
Love her. Meeting her is on my bucket list. She talks about kind of what you're talking about with joy, that foreboding joy, because we have that moment of joy and then we freak out because we're like, this means something bad is going to happen, instead of just enjoying it and being in it. And a really great example of that, like you look over your kid sleeping and you're like, oh, my heart is so filled with love when I look at them. And then the next thought is like a horrible car accident where they die or something. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like, because feeling vulnerable with the joy and I guess like vulnerability and joy aren't really like a lot of times talked about hand in hand, but it is like it's scary to be happy when you don't have happiness a whole lot and you
Yes.
revert right back to like chaos.
That's such a good point. I had a similar experience with my foster son. We went through a 2-year roller coaster with his dad, and where we literally thought he was going to be taken away every day. I mean, it was just, and then we finally found out that the parental rights were terminated and we could finally breathe, and we knew this was going to be permanent. And the first thing I thought was, what if something happens to my partner and I'm alone with this child? Why is that the first thing I thought? Like, my brain could not allow me to be happy because it was just so used to like, ugh, you know, our human brains, I tell you. Okay. Let's see.
Jennifer, I
Yeah.
just wondered if you could address something that Angel wrote in the chat room, which is,
Yeah.
I'm so scared of setting boundaries. I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
I have the best news for you, Angel. You can't hurt anyone's feelings. We can't. They hurt their own feelings by what they're thinking. And that is so much freedom. I could do a whole hour presentation on that, but if I say something to you that's hurtful, if I say words, the words are just neutral. You can think one thing about it. I could think something different about it. Someone else might not think it's hurtful. They might think it's funny. And that's how we know it's neutral, because we can all have different thoughts about something. And so the hurt comes from their thought about it. The boundary that you might set would be hurtful to them because they're thinking this is painful, or they're thinking this isn't fair, or something like that. They could think, okay, I understand why she needs that boundary, but they're not. And so you can't hurt their feelings. And it is the hardest thing to wrap your head around, and the best news ever, because it gives you a lot of freedom. But we are socialized to do this from when, I mean, how many times have you told your kids, go say sorry, you hurt her feelings? I mean, I struggle with that with my son. Like, I don't want to teach him that, but everybody talks about that. So,
Could I add another thought around
yeah.
how people manage their own feelings? I also think we can trust that they know how to take care of themselves. If their
Yeah.
feelings are hurt, we don't have to go in and rescue them.
Yes.
If their feelings are hurt, they can enter into adulthood as well and
Yes.
take care of
Yes.
their own feelings. We don't have to take care of it for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was
This
the
applies
biggest
to us, but it applies to them too. Yeah.
That was a huge way what Denise just said off of me when I realized I wasn't responsible for other people's emotional stuff, because
Yeah.
it felt like my own all the time, and it was really hard to separate their stuff from my stuff. But once they're like, you don't have to be responsible for that, I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
hallelujah, like, thank goodness. Like, it's like such a weight lifted off.
It's so good. Yeah.
And now, but you'll hear things that people say that I think they mean well, but they try to put stuff on you that isn't yours. For instance, my chiropractor, I know I had mentioned something about like my husband having a drinking problem and how like we don't drink, and he's like, yeah, you need to make sure he doesn't drink. And I was like, no, that's not my responsibility. I was like, I have no control over whether or not he drinks or not. That's up to him. And he was just like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. It's stuff like that it, like, and we hear it and we just own it because that's what we were taught to do, especially as women, is to take on other people's stuff.
Yes.
And it's bullshit.
Yes. Yes. It's so true. And, you know, this is just like the tip of the iceberg of, you know, this is hard work. This doesn't just like, oh, I'm going to write a manual for myself. Like, no, this is like, you really got to like do the work. So to say that this is easy, no, not at all. And especially when everyone is expecting you to do for them or take care of them. Let's see, Angel, I feel obligated to take calls or communicate with people that don't understand my grief journey. Yeah. Obligation is the same as expectation. I'm telling you, it's the dream killer. And you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Just like the people that we have these manuals for can do anything they want to do, so can we. And that's where we take responsibility. I want to say that's not where I'm at. I'm going to assume, Angel, that you mean in this place where you can set boundaries. And that's okay. You know, it takes time. And sometimes we never get there. But I think something we can ask ourselves is this serving me? Is feeling obligated to take these calls serving me? Is it helping me progress in my grief? Is it helping me? The answer is no. We don't have to do it. I hear you saying it's okay to step away from caregiving. Yes, Regina. You can't take care of everyone. No. Denise, I don't know if you would share that, put on your oxygen mask. That isn't like you have to take care of yourself, but there are so many other people to take care of. Analogy, I think that might be helpful.
So do you want me to share my perspective on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you might hear people say you've got to take care of yourself, like they say on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first. And that is not a realistic comparison, because in the real world, there's not an oxygen mask that drops for everyone. In the plane, there's an oxygen mask for everyone. In our world, there isn't, which is why it's so hard, because you feel like you're always choosing who gets the oxygen mask, which means someone doesn't. And that's hard. That's why it's important for you to think about values and priorities as driving your actions. What's the priority right now? Giving yourself permission. My priority right now is my own mental health.
Yes.
Because of that, I'm not going to answer those calls that drain my mental health.
Yeah.
The other philosophy that I really love is never complain and never explain. And that's from Phil Donahue, who used to have a talk show in Chicago decades ago. And that was one of his family rules: never explain, never complain. So if you're not able to talk to someone, you don't have to go into this lengthy explanation. I was just at a retreat. What I heard at the retreat is that we all have these manuals. I mean, you don't have to go through all that. You can just say, now's not a good time. I'll reach out when it is.
No is a complete sentence.
Yes, there you go. Yep. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so anyone have any rules for themselves they want to create, that they want to share? Let's see what we've got here.
One of mine is reminding myself that I'm enough just as I am, and that I'm worthy of love and belonging. Those are kind of like my affirming statements. I remind myself. I actually just got a ring. You can't see it on there, but it goes across and it says, I am enough. And it's small enough to where like other people probably wouldn't notice there's anything inscribed in it, but it's just nice to have that reminder sometimes.
Yeah. You know, I coach for my life coaching school, and I've been coaching for them for full time for 2 years. And the one thing that comes up more than anything else is people don't feel like they're enough, no matter what circumstances they're in. And it's like an epidemic. It really is. We are always enough. And, you know, Angel, what I would offer to you is maybe a rule for yourself that wherever you are right now is okay. If you are not feeling like you can take those calls, that's okay. If you are immobilized with grief, that's okay. Like, you just allow it to be whatever it is. Anyone else I don't
If I
even
could-
know where I am with time, so
Oh, no, you're good. And if I could mention one other thing, and that is you are loved. And
yes.
that the love is not something you have to chase or earn or barter for. You are
No.
simply loved. And if you feel like, I'm not sure where the love is in my life, the love is from the universe
Mhm.
or from your God or your faith. You are loved.
Yes.
Because you are here in this world, you are loved. You are loved. And you don't have to earn it. You just have to be it. Just be in the love.
I will trust myself and trust others to receive what they need. Love that, Denise. Angel, I will intentionally cultivate joy each day, even if it's a small time period. I might even schedule it for myself, like meals. That's brilliant. And I would encourage you to look into the Respite in Place plan that Denise just created, because it's so good, even if you're not caregiving. I can disengage when I'm peopled out. I love that you get peopled out too. Sometimes I just can't people, right? It's just too much. I will not expect others to fulfill expectations of which they are unaware. Love it, Kathy. Yeah. So I want you to take some time and create an intentional manual for yourself and moving forward and beginning again. We'll ask for what I need. Yes, Ashley. And just revisit it regularly and make sure it still reflects your values, your priorities, what you want for yourself. It can be a Post-it, on your computer screen. It could be on your mirror. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. We have these fancy worksheets we can do, but we don't have time for that. Just put it on your mirror. I will have fidelity for myself in my grief journey. Yes, these are all so good. Okay, I'd love to continue this conversation if you want. I don't know where we are on time, but I appreciate all your interaction, and you can reach me here. I help people do this every day. And if you are interested in doing more of it, I'd be happy to help. All right.
Jennifer probably offers a free consult.
Yes, free 30-minute consult.